Hi friend, welcome back to the channel where we focus less on trying and more on being the best version of ourselves. This topic is long awaited by me because I've been the only one harping on me to get it done, but today is the day. We are finally here. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while because I feel like it can lead to a lot of confusion if we're not quite clear on the dynamics of reality creation, what all goes into manifestation, what even really is manifestation, because obviously we're here in this community, it's kind of a niche, and we use terms in certain contexts and it means something to us. So when we say manifesting, obviously we're talking about conscious manifestation, creating a reality, like having an intention and seeing your intention be made into something tangible, into something physical. There's a level of conscious control or orchestration, right? But we always say you're manifesting all the time. Everything is a manifestation. Your whole entire life is manifestation. All life is manifestation, because manifestation is based on consciousness, and we're all conscious, right? We're all alive. We're all here having a human experience. So therefore we're all manifesting, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Now, where it gets a little dicey is, one, if we say creation is finished, then what does it mean to create your own reality? And two, if I'm creating my own reality, then how come this, that, and the other are happening on the outside world or in the mundane world that I feel like I did not intend for, that this thing is not good, this thing is not helpful, it does not benefit society. So why is this thing here? So for this conversation, we need to talk about the dynamics of reality creation, what it means to live in an observer-based reality, and the collective consciousness, which is how we get the big things, the things that happen on a worldwide scale, okay? To help me with this today, I have a quote from Parallel Universes of Self by Frederick E. Dodson. I talked about this book a couple videos ago, and I really love the way that things are explained in this book. I will always love Neville, but I pick up things from everywhere, and I know you guys are always asking for book recs. I do have a post in the community tab. Check that and look at all the books that I have listed there. I do update it pretty frequently when I read new books that are manifestation related. If you want to know some of my top picks, look there, but we'll also talk more about books, and I'll give you more quotes and examples in videos so you can see if it's a book you'd be interested in reading, because it's kind of hard to recommend a book that's good for any particular situation the same way that my videos can apply for many different situations or many different things you're manifesting. It's genuinely more about the approach, and if you like the style, if you like the ideology behind what the person is saying, that's going to lead you to connect with the work, which is why I kind of pick and choose and have my own amalgamation of the way that I see things and the way that I build my own belief systems and my own practice, which everyone should do for themselves. But today we have some examples from Parallel Universes of Self. When I'm reading this quote, I want you to remember that you are the observer. Everybody is their own observer in their own reality, but when it comes to conscious manifestation, you are the observer, even regardless of people in your reality showing you something differently. Even that is a reflection of you. The observer is not a special case, but also splits just as the observed reality does. The observer is interconnected with the observed reality. Furthermore, the various parallel worlds are not non-intersecting or autonomous, but can intersect and produce overspills or bleed-throughs into other realities. In the very moment an event is observed, the very act of observation not only creates the event, but creates a split in which one version of the event is perceived and the other versions seem to fall away as far as your current viewpoint is concerned. But they do not stop existing. Instead, they retreat into their own parallel reality with their corresponding observer. So, if you're familiar with many worlds theory of quantum physics, this is what this is talking about. Basically, all possibilities of existence already are laid out, because if it could be imagined, somebody has imagined it, some being has imagined it somewhere, and it does exist either in the field of potentiality, the alternative space, the 4D, the mental realm, the mental plane, right? It either exists there or it exists in physical reality in some form. So if you think about it like that, if all realities, all possibilities of existence ever do exist, then there's going to be some conflicting realities. But just because two realities are conflicting and there are two versions of truth, it doesn't negate the other version of truth, right? That's also a lot of people's biggest qualms with, why is this manifestation coach saying this thing and why is somebody else saying a different thing? Why did somebody do this technique and another person did it and it didn't work? Why are there conflicting ideas within spirituality, within different communities, within different ideologies? It's because our reality is observer based. It's based on your own personal experience, your beliefs, your thought systems, your state of being, your self-concept. All of these things coalesce to create your version of reality, what you are able to see. And until you change your perspective, or until you have a new lens to see reality through, you will continue to see the same things that you've programmed yourself to see previously. Other people might not have had the same programming, might not have had the same upbringing, and might not see reality in the same way you do, even if you're looking at the same reality. This explains a lot of the tricky phenomenon when it comes to manifestation, like if two people are manifesting the same SP, if somebody's manifesting for something to go one way and somebody's manifesting for it to go the other way. You have autonomy in your reality unless you give it away. It's not that it's not still yours, but you can allow yourself to be subjected by other people's observations. And if you take those to be your own, if you take those belief systems on, if you start thinking from that point of view, then you share that reality with that person, right? Because they're intersecting. We obviously interact with other people. We obviously have different versions of people in our realities who we share our time with, who we share our lives with. And those people also have their own versions of reality and their own way of seeing things, even if you're having similar experiences or experiencing something together. Two people can still come away from the same event having a different experience and a different interpretation of what happened. But because of the way reality works, that doesn't negate the other experience. Both experiences are just as true. Both point of views are just as true, and both can be valid and invalid depending on the way that you look at them. Another thing with this is the possibilities, right? So if you're manifesting for a certain outcome and that outcome happens in your physical reality, that does not mean that the other outcome, the alternative, no longer exists. It just goes back to the field of potentiality. It just goes back to the intangible realm. It still exists, you can still imagine it, and so it's still real, because that mental world, the imaginal plane, is no less real than the physical world. That's where all those possibilities exist, and if it weren't for those possibilities existing there, we wouldn't have anything here, right? As above, so below. This also helps explain like manifesting people out of your reality, like a third party or something like that. It doesn't mean that people just poof disappear into nothingness, but two people can exist in their own realities and even exist in close proximity to each other and never have any crossover. There can be a reality where there's no correlation just because two people are so far out of alignment that they can't coexist in the same plane, in the same space. If there's a large energetic discrepancy, which just means somebody's state is so far away from the state of being that you're in that it doesn't make sense for you and this person to coexist in the same space, then you won't. Even if they're there, you won't see them, you'll barely miss each other. Weird things will happen to keep you separated. The same thing is true in the opposite. If you and another person haven't seen each other, haven't thought about each other in years and years and years, but you are vibrating similarly, you both are in a similar state, then your realities are going to interconnect with each other. You're going to start having experiences that are very similar, or you're going to run into each other, or something's going to happen that's going to bring you back into union or connection with that person. That's just how the mechanism works. This also is talked about a little bit in reality transurfing. It's not necessarily that you're creating. We say creation is finished, even though we also say create your own reality. It's a context thing. Sometimes we just use words because it's what makes the most sense and it's what's most accessible to us. But we understand that we're really not creating anything. It's already been created, but we get to choose and we get to kind of surf through these different realities. We get to move and shift through the alternatives and follow the lifeline that we prefer. It's not that there's some destiny that's laid out and predetermined for us. We get to foresee the future that we want. We get to put ourselves in the state of the wish fulfilled and go where we prefer to go. And in that place, we are observing the reality where our desires have manifested. That doesn't mean that there's not a reality where your desires have not manifested. They both exist, but the one you give your focus and attention to is the one that manifests in your own physical reality and becomes the truth for you. So this is also important to go over before we start talking about collective consciousness and what it means to create on a collective level while also being the creator of your own reality. Okay, so the quote goes on to say, it means there's no reality without its corresponding observer, and there's no observer without its corresponding reality. Reality version and observer version are always connected. Every reality comes with an observer, and every observer comes with a reality. And it also means that there are an infinite number of realities that you do not perceive, but that are just as real as your current one, and taking place just as your current one, and especially they are all accessible by you because they are also you. This also means you don't really have to create these realities because they already exist. You merely have to become the version of yourself that corresponds to the desired reality. This is actually great news. So if you ever hear somebody telling you, you don't create your own reality, it's already created, it's predestined, creation is finished, and they're using it in a way to tell you that you have no agency, you have no control, you just have to be thrown around in the wind by life, it's false. Yes, all these versions of reality exist. They're all created. Creation is finished. You have infinite possibilities, but there's no one outside of you who's choosing which possibility gets manifested. It's only you that's choosing that. So how do we choose that reality, right? The reality that we live in, the reality that we exist in, is based off of a culmination of things, obviously. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your self-concept, your state of being, how you think life works for you. All of these things coalesce to give you the reality that you experience on a day-to-day basis, your immediate surroundings, the people that you interact with, the experiences that you have are created by you. So I like to summarize that as your identity, but also from a more scientific standpoint or a spiritual standpoint, this is all about vibration. It's about energy, because at the end of the day, that's all reality is. We live in an observer-based universe, and everything in this observer-based universe is energy, and you are also energy, and you are also made up of the same thing, right? Which is why there's no separation, which is why we pick up on each other's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and we orient ourselves accordingly, whether we're conscious of it or not. That all kind of gets done for us. But you have your own vibration, your own energetic set point, or your own state of being, and then your immediate surroundings have a state, your family has a state, your town, your city, your state, your actual, like the state that you live in, your province, your country, and then the world at large has a state. There is a vibration of the earth. Like if you were to put everybody's state on a scale and then get the average, that would make up the state of the earth. You can look on the micro and the macro, because then you could say there's a state of our galaxy, there's a vibration of our universe. It gets a little bit wacky, but let's keep it to collective consciousness of earth. So we all have our own individual states, our own vibration, our own energy, our own vibe. We all have agency over our own identities. But when it comes to the world at large, we have to factor in that everyone is creating their own realities, which means that everybody has their own crossovers and their own interlapping stories. So if there's a story, especially if it's been perpetuated over a long time, if there's a lot of history behind it, if there's a lot of energy or power behind it, that's when you start getting things like pendulums, egregores, things that people are feeding their energy into and making bigger and bigger and bigger thought forms out of. And those thought forms, because they are energy, are just as real as the things that are tangible to us, because those are just energy as well. So when we as a collective are consistently feeding into a certain story about our world that we live in, that also becomes part of our identities on an individual level and on a consensus level. We are creating on an individual basis, but we are also creating together. This is why I understand the term co-creation. I personally like to stray away from it only because I don't like to perpetuate any notions that there's separation. There's no separation between you and anything that exists ever, period. The end is all the same thing, made up of the same building blocks. And yes, there are different forms, different amalgamations, different patterns that are made up by the way that we are being. But at the end of the day, break it down to the smallest level it could ever possibly be broken down into. We are all the same energy. So if we are consistently feeding our energy into this big thought form that says, my country is a dangerous place to be, or my country has a lot of opportunity, or my state has these political beliefs, or my family always operates in this way, this is always the dynamic with my family. On any scale that you could observe humans doing human things on, there is a level of co-creatorship. There is a level of your reality interacting with other people's realities, right? Because you're listening to people, you're taking things in, you're getting feedback at all times. So that does affect you at some level, especially if you are unconscious. I want to make that very clear. It affects you especially if you are unconscious. If you have no idea about reality creation, if you have no idea that you can manifest, that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, then you are a lot more susceptible to be swayed in a certain direction depending on public opinion. How do we deal with things like this? When there's been something that's created on a large scale and we want something different. As people who are conscious, we want better for our world, we want better for our communities, for our families, for our loved ones. What do we do differently when creating on a macro level than we do on the micro level? Truly, there's no difference. There's no difference. The only difference always is awareness. Always, it's always awareness, it's always consciousness. So I do want to say that I know it can be touchy. I understand how sometimes this perspective can be hard to wrap your mind around, especially if you're not well versed in metaphysics. You don't see the world for the energetic basis. You see it for the physical and the tangible, which is not a bad thing. That's what we're here to do. And not everybody is here to completely understand. So I get that. And I get that some people might have qualms with what I'm about to say, but I want you to put on your open mind, just crack your skull open for a minute and see if this idea resonates with you. So let's say you're living in a place and someone comes into power that doesn't have the best interest of the community at heart. People would say, well, if manifestation is real, why aren't you doing this and that to help these people here? Or why are these good people in this situation here? There's so many ways that I could go about explaining this. What's important to understand is that you have to know sometimes good people don't understand that they are worthy of having good things. There are cycles that are perpetuated of belief systems and patterns over and over again that make people assume that their state of being, the way that they live, what they know to be true is the only truth, and there is no truth outside of that, and that keeps people in a box. There are also some people who have come into this experience for that particular experience. And for some people, that's really hard to hear, that some people did come to this planet, they came to this plane, they came into a physical body to suffer. It's not necessarily that some people's life purpose is to suffer, right? But if you think about it from an expanded viewpoint outside of your body, as a being who doesn't know physicality, who doesn't know pain, who doesn't know emotions other than pure bliss, pure oneness, pure wholeness, we come into the physical experience to experience ourselves, because as source in that place of nothingness, we have no reference to experience ourselves. We have no way to know ourselves as all that is unless we become all that is. So when people ask, what's God's desire, or what does the universe will for me? Nothing except more experience, for you to experience whatever it is you came here to experience, whatever you want to experience. And whether or not it seems good or bad by moral terms or by your ethical terms, one, that's subjective. It's not the same for everybody. It's not clear cut. And two, let's think about not necessarily what the experience is, but what is the energetic payoff for the experience. That might be a thing to consider. So obviously, suffering's not great. Obviously, we want people to have good lives. We want people to feel fulfilled and know that they're capable, and know that they can create the reality that they want for themselves. We can create a better world for ourselves to live in, for our children to live in, for generations and generations to come, to have this knowledge from the get-go, so we don't have to go through all these experiences that are sometimes extremely painful in order to learn these things so we can tell it to the next person. We want it to just be baseline. We're not all the way there yet because of the collective thing, right? Because of raising the vibration of the entire planet. So how do we do that? So that we have less of these situations of martyrdom and less of people feeling guilty for having a certain experience when maybe other people didn't have the same experience or feel incapable of having the same experience. How do we bridge the gap? Like I said, it always comes back to self. It comes back to you, the way you see yourself, the way you see the world that you live in at large, and how you interact on a day-to-day basis with experience itself, with consciousness itself. The most important thing that you can do is to get right within yourself to the best of your ability, to see yourself fully as who you are, to fully remember who you are, your power, what it is that we're doing here, what the point is of this experience, to find that out for yourself, and then do whatever you're called to do to further that effort. Whether it's just living a good life, whether you are starting charities or nonprofits, whether you're going out into your community and you're collaborating and building things and giving ideas and implementing things that make the world a better place. All of those things are amazing, and they all start with you. They all start with you seeing yourself as somebody who's capable, somebody who has a message worth listening to, somebody who is bold enough to make a path for themselves, for other people to follow, somebody who is brave enough to follow in the footsteps of someone they admire, to put their best foot forward to furthering a cause. Every person who does that on an individual basis is one more vote for the collective consciousness. It's one more rung up the vibrational scale we get as a planet, as a consciousness, because we have our own consciousness. But if we're coming at it from the perspective that consciousness is infinite and consciousness is all that is, then we are also the consciousness of our world. We are our own individual consciousness, but this is not the purest form of us. This is the form we came in to have this experience so we could learn. But that learning goes forth to benefit the collective. So from that perspective, yes, we are co-creating with other versions of ourselves to manifest this experience that we call being a human being on the planet Earth. So when things happen, when scary things happen in the world, when bad things happen in the world, even when bad things happen to you on an individual basis, when things that you would not prefer to happen are in your field of awareness, the first thing that you always have to do, the very first thing, it's not the only thing, I'm by no means saying that this is the only thing, but I'm saying the first priority is to make sure that you are in the proper state, to do the things that you want to do to see the change that you want to see in your reality. By making sure that you're in the correct state first, that you're not perpetuating stories of history repeating itself to no end or to a seemingly negative end, your first priority should be to make sure that you are doing your part to lift up the collective vibrationally by your state of being, that you are as consistently as possible living in a state of fulfillment, following your excitement, doing the things that you feel like you're called to do, because I promise you, if your intention is good for the world, if your intention is pure for yourself, for others, if you're doing things for the highest good, or at least not with malicious intent toward others, whatever you do, whatever excites you, whatever your desire is going to benefit everyone else. Your greatest benefit to the world is to be the version of yourself you know you're supposed to be that highest version of yourself, and to allow that to reflect onto somebody else so that that person can be the highest version of themselves and they can spread it to somebody else, and it's a domino effect. And then everybody is rising up together rather than one person holding a sign, yelling the same thing over and over for years on end, and nobody wants to listen because nobody has done the groundwork of understanding that you cannot live in a reality that is not in alignment with your state. Remember from our quote, the observer and the reality are connected. They cannot be separated from each other. There are many different realities, but the observers and the realities are paired. They're matched up. Observer number one is not going to go to reality number two and be able to coexist there effectively. Either the reality is going to have to change or the person is going to have to change. So always start with, what can I do to get right with myself internally? How would I want to see things? How would I prefer things to be? What is in the best good for myself, and subsequently in the best good for all? From that place, knowing that change is possible, that those possibilities do exist for better, for bigger, for brighter, you move throughout the world differently. Different ideas come to you. You're able to collaborate on a different basis and get different things done when you're coming at it from the viewpoint of, this thing is not such a lost cause that there's no point. We just have to deal with this reality. We just have to riot. This is just the world. This is just the human experience, and it's something that's based on suffering. I am by no means saying that suffering doesn't exist, that scary things don't happen, or that people are wrong for being in vibrational states that lead them to having those experiences. Because I've been there, I'm sure you've been there, and I'm sure you've seen things that would imply that a lot of the world is still there, and maybe will be for a while yet to come. But if we want to see change in our realities, it starts on that individual basis. It starts with each of us individually rising up and saying, I'm going to be different. I'm going to see things differently. I'm going to have a positive impact on this world. I'm going to be the change that I want to see. And from that point, then you can do outreach. Then you can do the footwork to tangibly put the action in and make something happen. From that place of already knowing that you are somebody who's capable, this possibility exists, and you see it as a true, real reality for your world. Coming at anything, whether you're talking on the macro or the micro scale, looking at a problem and trying to fix it from the state of being that created the problem. Who said that? Einstein? You know that adage, trying to fix a problem from the same state that created the problem is never going to give you the solution. You have to be the solution first. You have to feel the solution, know that you are the solution, that the solution is already there before you're gonna find it. Because if you're constantly looking for problems, what are you gonna find? More problems, always. So change your state, change the way you're thinking, and then let's collaborate on ways to make this shit better and see things getting better and better every single day, and setting that intention that others will come to the awareness that things can get better. And not only is it possible, that it's happening right now. Every single person who comes online, every single person who wakes up is contributing. That is your biggest contribution to the earth. The biggest contribution to the collective consciousness is to remember who you are, to remember your power. And once enough people do that, it becomes very easy to congregate, to make things happen, to make real tangible shifts in the world, because we're all on the same page. It's not really a true collective consciousness if we're all in our own little bubbles of suffering and we're feeding these egregores and thought forms of more bad things to come. We're feeding the egregore of impending doom. Having said all that, I also want to make it very, very abundantly clear that seeing bad things happen, seeing things that you would not prefer in your reality, noticing them, recognizing them, acknowledging them even, does not mean that you are negatively contributing. I think that some people have a really rough time with interacting with reality at all when they start practicing conscious manifestation, because they feel like if anything is deemed bad, then I shouldn't look at it, I shouldn't know about it, I shouldn't interact with it, it doesn't exist, because if I interact with it at all, that thing is going to become real for me in my reality, and it's gonna manifest, and I'm gonna have a bad time, right? So think about this in the same way we think about thoughts. Thoughts exist and are there in the world, just like circumstances exist and are there in the world, whether they are relevant to you or not. Recognizing a bad thought that comes up, a thought that you would prefer not to identify with, does not mean that that thought is automatically going to jump out and attach itself to you. You give it that power to attack you, or to mean something about you or your world or what's possible to create going forward. So seeing something happen, engaging with something, doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a bad outcome. The same way, if you have a negative thought pop up and you just say, well, that's a stupid thought and that's not true, actually I manifested this, you can still get your manifestation. I'm sure you've experienced wavering, having a little bit of doubt, but still pushing those thoughts aside and choosing, still making a choice to stick with your faith and getting the outcome that you prefer, even though there were opposing thoughts. That's why you don't need to flip every single thought. It's the same when you see things happening in reality. You don't have to pretend that things aren't happening, but what would be beneficial is for you to recognize that that's something that you don't prefer, and see how you can internally shift yourself to have a different perspective on it, be in a state where you can be solution oriented around it. And even if you are not the person that can physically do something to help with that, how can you spread awareness? How can you help people in a different way? How can you shift the energy to be of service instead of piling thing on top of thing, and then we just have this big shit pile that we have to figure out what to do with the shit pile, and now everybody's running around like chickens with their head cut off because nobody knows what to do because the world is on fire. That doesn't help. It never helps to freak out. Worry never helps, freaking out never helps, but avoiding things never helps either. So this is not about avoidance. This is not about spiritual bypassing. This is not about, oh, just pretend it's not there. It's there. I hope that I've made that abundantly clear that everything is there. All possibilities exist, but where are you going to put your vote? If you get to create your own reality and you understand that you're brushing shoulders with other realities, that your reality can have impact on other realities, then don't you want to be that domino that's going to set off the rest of the chain reaction? That's the easiest thing you could do, and also the most powerful thing to do. But that doesn't mean that it's the only thing that you can do. But I thought that was really important to talk about, because It is true that you're creating on an individual basis, that you are in control of your own reality, and if things are happening outside of you that you deem as unfavorable, you do not have to be negatively affected by it. That is a choice. You can choose to be sovereign in yourself and say, this is not an experience I'm available for. I'm available for seeing change for the people that the situation affects, but I'm not available to be negatively affected by it. I'm available to be a catalyst for positive change in whatever way I can, in whatever way I'm called to, in whatever ways are made available to me. And I promise you, acting on your excitement, getting really clear with yourself, getting to know yourself better will allow those opportunities to show up to you so much more readily, because you will be seeing with a clear focus, seeing things righteously. Isn't that a good thought? Isn't that something good to know, that just you being fulfilled yourself, just you having positive impact on yourself, living the life that you want to live and being unapologetic about that, being most authentic to what feels right for you, what feels in alignment for you, does so much good for the world, so much more so than pitying people or feeling sorry for people or harping on a problem that people already know exists. It's like, thank you for spreading awareness. Yes, we do know. But what is the impact here? What's the implication of this? What is this going to do for us? And if it's not doing anything for us, and if it hasn't been time and time again throughout history, then can we be the people to figure out a way to make something actually shake? Can we figure out how to create lasting change and a deeper understanding of our relationship with our world? Of course we can, because all possibilities exist. Creation is finished. So the reality exists where we are creating a beautiful collective consciousness, where we live on a beautiful earth, and where things are happening in the highest good of all. But I know that that can be a super overwhelming and daunting thought. So understand that no, you are not completely responsible for everything that happens in the world ever, obviously, but you definitely contribute. We all definitely contribute. And your biggest contribution is yourself. So always remember, hope is not lost. We are not helpless, we are not hopeless. No matter what the pendulums may suggest, no matter what outside forces may suggest, outside forces, remember that all those outside forces are us. We're voting for them with our energy, we're contributing, we are creating together. We're manifesting together as well as individually. So don't fear the outcome. Don't fear the world, and don't fear the future. The same way you wouldn't feed into the story about the old version of yourself is the same way that you wouldn't feed into the story of the old version of the collective reality. So if there are things that you want to see change in the world, start seeing them differently. Start seeing yourself as somebody who's capable of doing something to help, of actually making a change. It all starts with you. You have to remember first who you are, and then you can go out and you can be so great. And it doesn't have to be scary. It's not supposed to be scary, remembering who we are. But it is each individual's responsibility to come to that knowing first, to be able to understand how everyone else is impacted by that as well. Always remember, there is no reality. There's no reality at all without you. You are the observer. You're the most important thing. What's going on in here? What's going on in here? That's paramount, always. So if you're frustrated with the way things are going in your life, in your community, in your world, always remember there is choice. There's choice, there's possibility. They are infinite. It's not as daunting to think about when you understand that there's no separation, that you're not separated from this collective, that you're not separated from the world at large, that you're not separated from God or from Source. You are that. And we are so capable beyond comprehension of doing anything we want to do. So that's why we're here. That's what we're doing. And literally being here, being in spaces like this, that's the work. It's nothing. It's effortless. Like, oh, I remember. I'm amazing. I'm the version of myself I want to be. I can create anything I want. I can have a positive impact on my community. I can have a positive impact on the world. Just me being who I am is of service. So I really hope that gives you a little bit of peace and settles your heart, because I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I want everybody to know the truth of who they are, so that we can all be the versions of ourselves that we want to be and live in the realities in which we want to live, and we can share that with each other. And that's so beautiful. And I love doing that. And I love being here with you. I'm so happy you're here. Okay, anyway, we're done. That's it. That's all I had to say today. All right, you guys, that's gonna do it for me today. I intend this message serves you well, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments. If you're interested in working with me or checking out any of my other platforms, all that information's in the description box below. And other than that, I love you all so much. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.